We'll talk more later. Now we come to the third presenter, Dr. Graham Aylett. Graham is the General Secretary of INCREASE, a network of TEE providers. He is also a member of the Commission on Accreditation and Educational Development of the Asia Theological Association. And so he represents both formal and informal theological education. Graham has served as missionary in Mongolia for many years, and he was there the director of the Mongolia TEE.
Back in so Clay Graham, here in Phoenix is a special feeling. Amy and I.
Graham, please give your presentation.
Thank you. I'm glad our conversation today focuses on the church. For most believers, the local church is their primary training provider, and theological education has to reach them there, or it's not going to reach them. I want to talk about three interconnected things: equipping pastoral leaders as equippers of all God's people, a renewed focus on theological education for all God's people, and about integrated learning pathways, bringing together a range of training providers. As we see, there's a great variety of theological education providers. Let's think of these like the many different shaped pieces of a jigsaw. And maybe Jesus, Lord of the church, wants to put the jigsaw pieces together to complete the picture, to equip his people, to build his church. When pieces of the jigsaw are not connected, or when pieces are missing or damaged or twisted or broken, the training picture is not complete, and the church suffers, and God is not glorified. And the most important thing about the pieces of the jigsaw is probably not whether they're formal or non-formal, however defined, but whether they are the right piece in the right place. That is, are they serving the church effectively and fruitfully according to their purpose? I'd like to focus on two areas where the theological education jigsaw may need the hand of the Lord, bringing connection and integration. First, in the training of pastoral leaders. How can we better equip pastoral leaders as equippers of all God's people? Let's use available non-formal tools. The gap we're exploring can mean that non-formal theological education is undervalued and overlooked. So learning about valuable non-formal tools may be given little or no time at all in a formal pastoral training curriculum. They become part of the null curriculum. That sends a message to learners: these tools are not worth your time or our time. But that can mean that graduates go into pastoral ministry with an incomplete toolkit. And worse, they may go into pastoral ministry, yes, with knowledge and leadership skills, but without a vision for equipping, without training and skills to use appropriate materials and methods to equip church members for their ministry and mission. If equipping has not got into the DNA of pastors, it has serious consequences for the churches that they will lead. The second area that may need the hand of the Lord to bring connection and integration is the task of equipping the whole people of God for the mission of God. Church members, in many ways, are the missional front line of the church. Every day, they meet with those of other faiths and no faith. They're engaged in business, the arts, local, national politics, IT, management, media, entertainment, as well as their homes and local communities. How are these church members equipped for the mission of God? What about theological education, church-based training programs to meet this enormous and vital training need? If this dimension of theological education is seen as less valuable or has lower status, then human and financial resources available to these programs may be limited. So programs may be limited in scope, limited in relevance, and limited in quality. And when that happens, again, there are serious consequences for the health of the church and the church's capacity to participate in the mission of God. But I want to move on to encouragements, because in this consultation, we're hearing a heart for mutual understanding and collaboration. How might we go forward together? First, perhaps, by building more partnerships between different kinds of providers to equip seminary graduates as equippers of all God's people. Can seminaries give students a vision for equipping the saints for the work of ministry, as Ephesians 4:12, for equipping the whole people of God for the mission of God? Can formal training work together with non-formal providers to give students tools that will help them to equip their church members? For example, in Pakistan, ATA accredited Zarephath Bible Institute partners with the national TEE provider to train all their students to use grassroots TEE courses, vital for equipping the people of God for confident faith in their Muslim context. And can accrediting agencies encourage seminaries that this forms a vital part of holistic evangelical training and equipping with ministry skills? Second, can we go forward together by building partnerships for integrated learning pathways to equip all God's people for ministry and some for leadership? Now, in the wider world of education, the United Nations Education, Science and Culture Organization, UNESCO, recognizes the importance of lifelong learning to the general health and well-being of societies as a whole. And I quote, "Connecting formal and non-formal education is one of the pillars of any lifelong learning policy." So UNESCO encourages governments to help identify and value informal and non-formal education using recognition, validation, and accreditation, RVA. Perhaps we more often speak of recognition of prior learning, RPL. But recognition of prior learning may be unplanned and, of course, must be reckoned in retrospect. Can we do better? What if we plan integrated learning pathways? Pathways rooted in context in the local church, involving a range of providers in partnership with the local church, equipping the people of God for their missional roles, and which for some would connect with and contribute to formal leadership training. What steps could help? Can existing non-formal providers in a country context connect with one another to see how their programs relate to each other and work for integration? Can accrediting agencies provide appropriate quality assurance for non-formal providers, enabling them to demonstrate that their training is effective and fruitful, fit for purpose? And can church leaders and training providers, both formal and non-formal, serving together in the same context, explore what the needs are, identify the contributions that each can bring, and see how they fit together? This could lead to integrated learning pathways joining the pieces of the jigsaw, pathways carefully planned with appropriate quality assurance and assessment. Could accrediting agencies affirm this approach of integrating church-based and seminary-based theological education so that seminaries are encouraged to join the pieces of the jigsaw? For example, we could see a first stage of training in the local church delivered by a range of providers, leading to an accredited certificate which gives the student entry to diploma level contributions from a formal training provider. The Asia Theological Association's revised manual has started to develop guidelines for quality assurance for learning pathways like this. And I'm so encouraged by the happy and good relationship between Increase and the ATA. Integrated learning pathways could bring massive benefits to the churches with resources and educational thinking of those trained formally contributing to training in the churches. They could bring massive benefit to formal programs as more and more suitable candidates for leadership training grow up in the local church. And learners would benefit too when they know that even the first stages of their learning are recognized and can contribute to milestone awards as they grow in maturity and ministry, and they see the credits they gain at each stage contributing to the whole program. You could read more about these ideas in the new Increase and ICETE book, TEE for the 21st Century, which will be included in your digital resource pack. Have a look at the chapter on quality assurance. In conclusion, how good and pleasant it is when brothers and sisters live together in unity. When the pieces of the jigsaw are connected, there the Lord commands the blessing. Amen. Thank you.
Mission of the church in the world. Now, since we are talking about accreditation, there's a question from the chat. What is the place of accreditation in terms of the mission of the church? And then another question, would it be helpful to think in terms of validation instead of academic accreditation?
Both very good questions. I think in different contexts and for different ministry situations, accreditation, that is a quality mark that allows wider society and the wider educational community to recognize the training that has been received, can strengthen the hands of pastors and church leaders. I think we all know that. So that would be my answer briefly to the first question. Second question, I am sure there's a place for other kinds of affirmation of quality, affirmation of effectiveness. It may be that in a particular context, it's not so important that a qualification received connects with a national qualifications framework in that country. In that case, let's have affirmation from the relevant church authorities. I do believe that some kind of affirmation is such an encouragement and a strength to learners, but I don't believe it needs to be academic accreditation.
Thank you. We'll discuss more about